What is up, everyone? Eugene here, and we are back with another video. This video was inspired by Intact, who is not only a judge for Red Bull BC 1 World Final 2019 in India, but he also released videos on Instagram analyzing and breaking down the battle, justifying his decisions. So my intention with this video isn't really to cancel or call anyone out. If your name is in this video, it's only for data aggregation purposes in order to drive discussion. So I'm not saying anyone is biased, and I don't want people to jump to conclusions. I don't think we should be jumping to conclusions, but I think more importantly, we can use this data to formulate educated opinions and actionable steps to better the community. So first and foremost, these votes are already made anyway, so please respect the judges' opinions and please keep an open mind when watching this video. All right, so before we jump into this data, there's a few problems I want to address. The first of which is addressing the 1% or top B-boys in a circuit that constantly recycle and how we create an echo chamber because of that. So basically, if you're in a battle or you and your opponent are in a battle, competitors can ask for or receive feedback from judges, and one of two things can happen. On some occasions, the judge will just insist on battling and be like, what, you want to battle me? And then nothing gets done. And the other case is where the judge actually gives feedback and either or both competitors walk away with some insight as to why the result is the way it is. But however, if you're an audience member, don't you think it would be weird to ask a judge why they made a call on a battle that you weren't participating in? And also, if you were in the judge's seat, would you find it weird that someone who wasn't involved in the battle is asking you for feedback? So I think we can come to some sort of agreement that there are tiers or levels in the breaking competitive scene. An international level, a national level, being within your state or your region, and a local level. And making the jump from one tier or one level to the next, it's kind of difficult, right? But more often than not, if you make it into the next competitive tier or whatever tier you're in, I guess, whether that's like the local scene or a national scene or whatever, most of the time the same people tend to circulate within that tier. It also depends on a lot of factors like who shows up and, you know, if you're injured or whatever. But so not only are they gaining experience battling amongst each other, the judges potentially provide feedback. So sometimes it's upon request where you go up and ask the judge, like, hey, like, what can I work on? What do I need to do? And then sometimes it's unsolicited. So the judge will come and be like, hey, man, you killed it, but like, you need to work on that footwork, man, or whatever. So the fact is, if you're competing, no matter what tier you're in, you're more than likely going to improve and remain in that circle until the next jump. So how can we make these tiers more accessible, or how can we make advancing to the next tier more accessible so that 1% of top B-boys don't remain in the same echo chamber? Yes, I acknowledge you have to put in the work, but I think there's a possibility to shrink that gap between the 1% and everyone else, even if it's by a small margin. And isn't that something that we kind of want as the scene to grow? So the second thing I want to address is people complain about the direction of breaking, how it's not always the way it used to be, or things aren't the way they want it to be, or that particular person wants it to be. But wouldn't you find it ironic if someone were to complain about the current status of the scene, but when put in the judge's seat, gets defensive and provides no feedback? That same person that's complaining about the scene, when you ask them why you lost, they're like, oh, wait, why do you want to battle me? You know, they get defensive and all that stuff. This is your opportunity to provide that same feedback as a judge. So you being in the judge's seat is your opportunity to change, you know, address an issue that you might have with the scene. But I'll get to that later. So over the past 11 years of my breaking experience, I've heard the same complaints over and over and over again. And I expect to hear them pretty much until I die, honestly. But if you're a community leader, there are actionable things we can do to help resolve some of our grievances. Sometimes it's impossible to wait for the next generation to just get it, right? So basically, the premise of this is that people need guidance, right? So about judging, there are certain things we all need to come to an understanding on. Not saying that this is the absolute truth, but I think we can all kind of see, you know, this from a similar perspective. So couple things to understand. Judges will sometimes claim that what they're going to be judging based upon before battle, whether it's accurate or not, but their vote speaks louder than what they say they value before battle, right? After all, someone is getting paid, getting rep, whatever. Whoever's winning is getting paid. If they're winning, they're getting rep, whatever it is, right? So their vote speaks louder than whatever their mouth does. So every battle is not only subjective, they're also relative. So if a judge says he likes to see style and finesse, and then all of a sudden you have two powerheads battling in a bracket, while yes, a powerhead can have style, the judge has to make adjustments to his or her values to fit the context of the battle, right? Imagine the same statement being made about style and finesse when watching two forward heads battle. The judge has to apply his or her values with a different lens now, right? So take this as another example. If you're a judge and you say, I vote based on flavor and originality, and then you see a bland powerhead that comes out and executes versus a beginner who just started and, they crashed. If you pick the powerhead based on execution because the beginner crashes round, then you're voting based mostly on execution, not flavor, really. So you have to see how these values change based on context. Yes, flavor may hold some weight over execution in your eyes or someone else's eyes, but judges have to make quick decisions with so many variables on the table, right? So this leads me to my next point about bias. Are there biased judges out there? Sure. Is bias a bad thing? Well, I guess it kind of depends, right? So bias is viewed from two perspectives, right? From the judge, a bias will lean towards what they value more. So if I'm the judge and I value, repeats, and I'm like, all right, I don't want to see anyone repeat, then that's going to be my internal bias. When I'm looking at someone's round, I'm looking, oh, this person repeated, so I'm not going to vote for them, whatever, So don't you think someone who repeated in a round wins against someone who bit a move? Which would you vote for? This is an internal bias, which is directed by your values, right? I don't see this as a bad thing. As a judge, you're hired for the position to give your opinion. So, I don't see this kind of bias as a bad thing. From a competitor or audience perspective, bias is more like a perception. So if you think you lost, or if you thought you lost, or if you thought someone else lost, maybe your values don't align with the judges, right? Of course, there is such thing as a biased judge who always votes for the same b-boy. I'm not discrediting that. But I think a lot of biased perception comes from misunderstanding, a lack of transparency between the judge and everyone else. After all, these are internalized decisions. So with that being said, I think a lot of frameworks intend to eliminate bias. But one, you can't really eliminate bias. And two, that's why we have the judges, for their opinion, aka their bias towards their values, not necessarily towards a particular competitor. So my question is, how can we create a scalable framework that works on both international and local level events, the whole spectrum? I don't want to knock R16, our judging system, but it would be hard to implement at a local level. Like if I wanted to throw a jam just in my backyard, how would that scale compared to, a high budget event like R16? It doesn't really scale down unless you put in the work in the back end, or what we can do is aim to maintain the current framework, which is like left, right, or tie kind of judging, and extend the responsibilities of these judges to not only keep them transparent, but also to hold them accountable. All right, so now to this data. So this data was manually collected by me and my boy Asa Marchi, my boy Alex, and it shows a series of multiple events, as you can see here at the bottom. We have Silverback 2015, Silverback 2016, 2017, 2018, Red Bull BC1 2004, 2005, all the way, and then we have a ton of Red Bull ones in there. But you guys kind of get the point. So for this in particular, these graphs right here, I decided to only look into Silverback 2016, 2017, and 2018 for a number of reasons. One, there were more repeat competitors over that 3-year span. 2, there were a number of repeat judges over the 3-year span. And 3, the judging was on a per round basis. So it provides more granular data to be able to see how close a battle actually was. So you can see for each of these events, I have the event name, the competitors and who they battled, where in the bracket they were, which round it was, round 1, round 2, round 3, if there was a tie or whatever. And then I also have who the judges voted for, right? So if, Issei versus Quick, Po1 voted for Issei, Goku voted for Issei, and so on. So if you scroll over to the right-hand side for, let's say, Silverback Open 2018, you will see that I have each competitor listed here. And I also have, depending on how far they made it in the bracket, each potential voting opportunity, each judge had to vote for them. So for example, Issei in 2018, depending on how far he made it in the bracket, each judge could have voted for Issei a total of 8 times for that night or for that event. So this is the total number. And then also next to it is the number of times each judge voted for that competitor. So for example, Po1 voted for Issei 8 times. Goku voted for Issei 6 out of the 8 times he could have voted for him. So below you'll see I have the percentages, how many times the judge actually voted over the total vote opportunities. So I took this number divided by this and I got a percentage, right? So let's use Silverback 2018 as an example. Skim and Lil Caesar only judged for 2018 out of the 3 years. And that year, Issei had 8 total vote opportunities per judge. So each judge could have voted for Issei a total of 8 times that night. Of all the opportunities, both Skim and Lil Caesar voted for Issei every single time. So are these judges biased towards Issei, or was Issei just killing it that night? And that's exactly my point. We can't jump to conclusions on these calls since there are so many different variables. So if you look at the totals tab that I have right here, you'll see that I've aggregated 3 years worth of Silverback data, 2016 through 2018. And for this, I summed up every voting opportunity each competitor had, as well as the actual tally of votes per judge over the 3-year span. So you'll see there are a bunch of judges over a 3-year span. And I have each of their tallies for who they voted for, how many times they voted for them. And below, the percentages are weighed by the total vote opportunities per judge per event attendance. So this accounts for if a judge judged the event only once, twice, or if they judged all 3 years on record. So these percentages are weighted, and you'll see, how many times that judge attended Silverback as a judge. So let's take a look at this data right here. I've aggregated all the data into a graph format, and you can select the competitor right here. So let's just go choose Robin, the first one, and you'll see the graph change. And this is going to show the vote percentage per judge over a 3-year span, as well as the total vote opportunities. So if you want to view this data, a link to the download file will be in the description below. Now, for example, if I'm Issei and I'm watching this video, I'd see this and I'd probably be like, well, I'm going to go to all the jams that Lil Caesar, Skim, Reveal, and Ronnie Ruin are judging because they have the highest consistency of voting for me. But now if you look at Issei's stats, let's take a look at Wicket's decisions right here. You could see he has the lowest percentage of voting for Issei. Does that mean he hates Issei? Which brings me to my next point. So I took an average of these judges. So these judges each have a percentage of how many times, a weighted percentage of how many times they voted for a B-boy. So remember, a higher voting percentage means a higher consistency when voting for a certain competitor. So the higher the percentage, the higher the consistency. So this chart right here shows the judge consistency as a percentage, showing the average percent a judge is consistent in voting for a particular B-boy or B-girl. Here you'll see Wicket is on the lower end percentage range. Does that mean just because he doesn't vote for the same B-boy every time, does that make him a bad judge, or does he hate a certain B-boy? So just by looking at this, Issei wouldn't be the only b-boy with a low vote percentage from Wicket. Conclusively, no, Wicket is not a bad judge, and he probably doesn't hate Issei. So although Wicket is more variable when judging as far as choosing particular competitors, does that mean he's more consistent with his values? For instance, if Wicket really looks at repeats and replies, and he sees a b-boy replying in one round but not the other, is he willing to vote against the b-boy he likes, who he voted for already before? You know, these are all speculations, right? And like I said, we can't jump to these conclusions. It's just food for thought. And while I'm here, I'll show a couple of other b-boys that I have data for. So let's take Hong Ten. You know, he has 4 total vote opportunities. These are the judges' percentage in voting for him. We have Menno. He competed in at least one of them, but he had 8 total vote opportunities, and these are the judges' their voting percentages for him. Let's take a look at Shigekix. You know, so obviously Crazy Legs voted for Shigekix every opportunity he could. Let's see, Stripes. All right, high voting percentage. Let's take a look at Victor. You know, so Victor competed throughout a number of years, I'm assuming, and Physics voted for him every opportunity he could. And then also he has a pretty high consistency rate. You can see Wicket has a low voting percentage for Victor. Let's go to Lil Zoo. I think he had 1 voting opportunity because he made it to, top 32. Tata, same thing. Phil Wizard. All right, so we have a number of people that voted for him. Wing Zero. Wing Zero had a really high voting rate for these judges. Let's take a look at Kazuki Rock. All right, not bad. Focus. Both Moy and Physics voted for him 100% of the time that they could. Gravity. Storm voted for Gravity 67% of the time he could. And Gravity has a really high consistency rate. So Gravity has a pretty consistent voting percentage among most of the judges. And there's a group of them out here that do that as well. But you can see Wicket is still around the same 30% as he was, you know, with Issei. And you can also see it down here. I think he's at like 33%. Yeah, so this makes sense. It's very consistent with what Wicket, his choice consistency is. So this data, I don't have a problem with. You know, this is telling a story of how things are currently done, and I don't see a problem with it. I see how we can improve things, right? From this point on, knowing what we have now. So even before all this data was shown, I'm sure we can all come to some level of agreement that there needs to be a fundamental change in judging while keeping the framework simple and scalable. Those are the 2 things we need. It needs to be simple and it needs to be scalable. So like I said before, I don't think there's a way to avoid bias in a sense. It's actually what we want. So my suggestion on how we can be better is based off 2 things. Accountability, letting judges know we're watching, or if I'm a judge, understanding that I'm being watched with scrutiny. And secondly, transparency. So when scrutinized, or even before I'm scrutinized, be able to speak on why you made a decision you did as a judge. So not just to the competitors, but also to the public, so we can all take from it and learn. So data like this can be taken a lot of ways, right? It may show who's biased. It may show which b-boy is consistently killing it. It shows how consistent judges are in voting for a particular b-boy. But is it consistent based on competitor, or is it consistent based on judges' values, right? If it's consistent based on values, you may get a more variable judge. So not only does this shed light for judges or give insight to how judges are voting, it also levels out the playing field. So now that everyone knows which judge will almost vote for them 75% of the time, will the judge continue to vote for them at future events after seeing these stats? So back to recap some issues. First, if a b-boy is consistently winning based on the judge's opinions, what exactly is it that makes them continue winning? If you ask the judges, some will insist on battling and, you know, like you want to battle or you have a problem with my decision, instead of providing actual feedback, right? And second thing is people complain about how the scene currently is and is not going in the direction that they favor, right? Yet very few people they end up liking are monopolizing the game because the judges aren't speaking up about why they won. So you have this 1% of b-boys who are actually really, really killing it. And then you have the group of pretty much everyone else, from beginner to hometown heroes to whatever, that people are like, oh, he's not doing it right, or he's you know, a vulture, he's doing things wrong, or whatever, you know. So that 1% is like making breaking look really good for everybody, but at the same time, people within the scene are complaining. And why is there such a separation? Don't you think there would be a number of b-boys willing to do whatever it takes to win? I mean, probably, right? There's a number of b-boys that want to do that. Maybe it's not you, maybe it's not me, but if b-boys cater to the style of the judges and the judges aren't doing anything to, one, be transparent, and two, hold themselves accountable, then the winners are going to keep winning, or people in that pool recycling through in that tier are going to continue winning. And the 1% of b-boys will continue that circuit, and it's just going to continue to recycle until, you know, that one person gets the chance to finally go in. So how can this be fixed? My first suggestion is judges should provide statements, even if it's a quick, it doesn't have to be an analysis. It can just be a quick sentence, unless they want to do an analysis. And I think the way Intact did it, if you go on his Instagram and check it out, he did a perfect job at that. And now take this, for example. If you have a judge who writes a statement on why they made a decision, and you get like, you know, this guy is dope. And then now you get Intact's statement, and he says, oh, well, this guy repeated, there was a crash here, I've seen this move before, and so on. And now as a promoter, or even as a competitor or a viewer, I can see the validity of Intact's judging by his statement versus the other judge who just said, oh, this guy is dope. So now between the two judges, you get to see who's credible in articulating their thoughts and justifying their decisions. And I personally would rather hire Intact to judge because of this. So providing statements to be transparent will also be the tool that holds judges accountable to make sure they're doing their due diligence. So did a judge like Issei more because he was replying the entire time every round? No repeats. What did the judge value? A judge can hop on the mic and say whatever they want right before a battle, but your vote speaks the loudest. So show me that. Write a statement after the vote. So not only does providing statements give transparency and accountability, this could potentially push the meta of breaking forward. So if everyone is able to see what a judge values, what's tried and true, like things like no biting, no repeats, no crashing, they can all start to shift their values as well, especially if they want to win, or even if they just want to stay afloat in the competitive scene. So my next suggestion is kind of out there, but for higher budget events with like tens of thousands of dollars on the line, judging is no joke and it shouldn't be taken lightly. But for high budget events especially, even for low ones if you can afford, is to have a live judge cam. You know, judges shouldn't be looking at their phones or not paying attention to the battle. How many times have you watched your footage from a jam only to see the judge in the back looking down at their phone, not paying attention, not even giving you the time of day? So, like, let's take this for example. If we have a judge that quickly checks his phone, and while he's doing so, the crowd goes off, and he looks up and he missed the moment. Let's say that judge ends up voting for the guy who made the crowd go wild, but the other 4 judges voted for the other guy because, you know, on a technical level, they thought he won. Now the judge comes up with some BS reason as to, you know, to defend his case. Like, why did you vote for that guy who made the crowd wild? You know, and, you know, if it doesn't line up with, you know, his values or whatever he's saying, then you can check. And this goes back to my whole transparency, accountability spiel, right? So you can kind of see not only with the cams, but also with the statements that these judges are doing their job or not. So these judges get paid, sometimes good money, to be doing what they do, and they should do a job that reflects that. Even if they're doing it for free, you as a judge took up a responsibility for the scene. So if you want to see the scene change the way you want to, being in the judge's seat is the perfect time. We need to fix our judging, not by canceling bias because that's impossible, but by being transparent and justifying why we made the decisions we made so everyone knows what values are stable and the whole meta of breaking, the whole community of breaking can grow as a whole. This doesn't apply to only one-on-ones. How many people have you heard complain about the current crew-on-crew situation? How back in the days, crews had specialists like a footwork guy, a power guy, top rock guy, whatever. If this is what these judges value, they can make their seemingly weird out there calls and make their statement to justify it. And maybe it's like, oh, I want to bring back the old school nature of real crew battles back, right? But now everyone knows why. So regardless, being transparent not only with the competitors, but with everyone at the event as to why you made the decision you made. So regardless, being transparent not only with competitors, but with everyone at the event as to why you made the decision you made can potentially make waves in the community. And this could be a sheet of paper you wrote, your short notes on and posted in the venue after all the battles. Or you could post the notes that you took on your phone on your social media after the event. So even at Red Bull, Intact showed that it's possible at a world-class level. Anyways, like I said before, my intention with this isn't to cancel anyone out or call anyone out. If your name is in this video, it's only for data aggregation purposes to drive discussion. So I'm not saying this to say anyone is biased, or I don't want people to jump to conclusions, and I don't think we should be jumping to conclusions, but I think more importantly, we can use this data to formulate educated opinions and actionable steps to better our community. So first and foremost, these votes are already made, so please respect the judges' opinions. Please let me know what you think about this in the comments. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.